Welcome to Bambuddha Boost this morning, everybody. We're very lucky to have Hiam with us. I've been practicing saying her name this morning, which is a beautiful meaning in Arabic, which is more than love, which this is how we feel about you today for joining in and supporting us and donating some of your time to give everybody a little boost this morning. So we had a good chat, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, because Hiam's just come on as a delivery partner. And we're talking about how right now is a beautiful opportunity to look at the very definition of culture within your business and look at team engagement and to get people to start thinking a little bit more about the how, because the disruption has created a beautiful opportunity for that. Hiam works with some of the biggest brands. She's worked for Google, she works with Atlassian, she's worked with our friends at Merlin Entertainment, just to mention a few. So she really knows her stuff. So I'm going to do what I do best, which is disappear. And I'll let Hiam take the ropes and share some top tips, advice and inspiration with you today.
Thank you, Anna. And really, thank you for having me along. I am only just started as a delivery partner, so I'm really thrilled to be in such great company. As you can see, this week is an awesome lineup. And also just thank you for giving us something that's regular, that keeps us grounded and gives us a little bit of sunshine every day. I'm really excited about tuning into these boosts. So yes, I thought let's talk about engaging in the how. We hear a lot about the why, thanks to Simon Sinek, but I thought we'd maybe engage in the how for a little bit, which is all about workplace culture. And I thought I'd just give you some stories, some methodologies, and some tips that I think could be useful at any level, whether you run a very large organization or a very small team. I wanted to make sure that what we have for you today is useful, something that you can action immediately if you want to and try, and lots of resources. So I'll kick on. As I say, this is just going to be a very quick look at two things, which is, and for some reason my laptop's decided not to work. Oh, here we go. Two things. One thing is organizational culture. How can we create an environment where people thrive? And the second thing, team culture. How can we help accelerate our team through COVID-19? And I don't mean by wringing every single drop of energy out of them. I mean in terms of increasing trust, which we know is the bedrock for team culture. And then we have time for questions, but please, this is a small group. Let's just ask questions as they come up, and we'll just integrate them into the session. So just a little bit of background and context. Back in 2006, when Google was just a weird up-and-coming tech company with an odd name, I applied for a job there alongside a number of other companies at the same time, and I just was waiting to see which ones would come through. I was in my mid-20s. I wasn't particularly thoughtful about what kind of company I would go for. I just wanted to learn new things. And they started me off on the interview process, as I said, alongside about 4 other companies. And I learned about them through that interview process. It was really, really, really long. And it was very detailed, and it went more into who I was as a person versus my skills and my expertise, which was in direct contrast to all the other interviews. All the other interviews I was going through were all about my skills and expertise. So it kind of gave me this very curious look into this company. And even though I was offered less money, I accepted the job there. And I remember on the very first day, I just walked into this organization, and I just felt this jolt of energy, of excitement, of a feeling of direction, of purpose. There's just a very, very different atmosphere there. And I was picking it up, and I was wondering, what is this called? What is this thing that you feel inside this organization? And during the onboarding process and induction process, which was pretty much 80% about how we work together, the word culture was used a lot. And it was the first time I'd ever heard this word used in the context of a workplace. I'd always heard the word culture being used when you travel. You go to experience another country's culture and how they just are, their rituals, the way they talk, their language, their food. but I never expected to hear this word culture so much in terms of a workplace. Again, back in 2006, this was just an odd term. So I felt like this is something that this organization was offering me, a unique perspective into this thing called workplace culture. And I decided very early on that I wanted to learn about it. And I wanted to dissect it, and I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be a part of crafting it. So over 10 years, I worked in various roles, from frontline business, sales side of things, through to the core people and culture team. And I landed in leadership development for Asia. And so I'm not classically trained in this. This was just something I learned along the way. And what I was very grateful for is they kind of gave me a first-class education in how to identify your culture, how to design it thoughtfully and intentionally, how to measure it, how to develop for it, how to integrate it. And it became almost like an immune system. You realize that if anything entered this immune system that was counter to the culture, it would kind of automatically find the fastest route out. And you also learned that this was very unique to this company. It doesn't mean that that particular culture or that those rules and principles would work if they were slapped on another organization. So it was, you as an organization really have to find your own way with your own culture and your own DNA. So from there, I left about 3 years ago, and last year I set up the culture equation. And I'm super lucky to work with a bunch of great people now, and we work with organizations that really get that culture is a differentiator. So I'd love to see a show of hands. I don't know if that works here. Show of hands if you believe that culture affects your mood. Or you could pop something in the chat window. Do you think culture affects your mood? Ooh, we have a yes from Frank, a yes from Sherilyn and Naomi. Great. Absolutely from Rob. Most definitely. What about, here's an interesting one. What about your performance? Can culture have any effect on your performance? Can you work harder? Can you come up with more innovative ideas? Do you think you can work more collaboratively because of culture? Let's have a look. Got some more definitelys. Okay. Yes, good and bad depends on the type of culture. Great. Okay, well, we can go into that. Culture sets the boundaries of my performance. Fantastic. What about your health? Can culture have any material impact on your health, your well-being, your stress levels? Let me see. Undoubtedly, Diane. Mental health both ways, good and bad, absolutely. Yep, yes, and I don't think we think about the impact on health enough. I would agree, absolutely. And lastly, what about the decisions you make? Can culture help you make better decisions? How? How could culture possibly help you make better decisions? Got another couple. Safer to collaborate creatively, sets criteria and provides the guiding principles for making decisions. That's great. Culture shapes whether I make decisions for myself or for my company. Thanks, Rob. Great. So for me, this really shows exactly why culture is such a differentiator and so important to invest in, so important to consciously and intentionally create and co-create, not just in a room with just the top executives or leaders, but the entire organization. So as I said before, I really don't believe that this is something that you can just take somebody else's culture, some other organization's culture, pop it on your organization and feel like it's going to look and feel the same as the culture that you, or the organization that you admire. But I do believe that there's a process. I do believe that we can all start very simply with measuring where we're at now. What are the things we would like to see more of? What are the kind of behaviors we'd like to see more of? Are they present across our organization? And literally through simple tools like SurveyMonkey, you can start measuring for this. And there are great tools like SurveyMonkey out there. For much larger organizations, I would recommend tools like Qualtrics or Culture Amp. But you need to start somewhere, and that somewhere has to be measuring where you're at, especially if you feel like, you know, change is what you'd like to achieve, a change in culture. You need to know where you're at now. Similar to if you're on a weight loss plan, the first thing your personal trainer or somebody at the gym would do is they'd pop you on the scales, and they would measure, they would measure how much you weigh, and also they would take measurements of your body. So you really need to know where you sit right now. And then the next step for me is working with the senior leadership team. I'm always really conscious that anything that people do very much is influenced by the leaders of an organization. So I'm very keen to start working with them as a second step to understand really how well are they working together as a team, or are they working together just as a group of individuals? This is very important. What do you think the biggest difference is between a group of people and a team of people, or a team? A group and a team. Any thoughts on this? For me, the biggest difference is, we have cohesion, trust. Absolutely, it is. And for some reason, I've managed to skip on, which I didn't want to do. I can't seem to go back. There we are. Yeah, absolutely, trust. So does this leadership team trust one another? Are they working together, especially now during the times we are in? They need to make key decisions, and those decisions need to be led by their values, by their purpose. What are they here to achieve? Or are they more making decisions around self-preservation, around my patch, about my interests versus the entity's interests, and keeping the entity safe throughout the virus and how long this is going to last? I also am very interested in how much they've invested in their own soft skills. I call them the power skills. They're certainly not soft. And definitely right now we are seeing those skills being put to the test. Skills like communication, like influence, negotiation, coaching. These are soft skills that I think will stand an organization in great stead, and they need to be role modeled from the top. How much time have these people invested? How confident are they in these skills? And what can we do to increase the skills across the board with our leaders? I then move on to the teams themselves. How are these teams feeling? And so I could be working with an organization with 500, 1,000 people. So obviously one team is the executive leadership team, but there's multiple teams all over the place. How are they feeling? And for that, I use kind of an upward feedback survey to gauge how are teams feeling about how they're being managed, how they're collaborating with one another, how they're being developed, are they being given career opportunities? And that's something, again, that we feed back to the whole entire organization, along with the guides and principles and tools on how you can have these very different conversations about how we work together, so that every team in the organization is empowered to have those conversations with clear data around about the same time, and make their own action plans bespoke to their team to be better, essentially. What we notice that leads to, we got some comments coming through. What we notice that leads to is that they end up being power skills. A better name for it. Fantastic. Thank you, Carrie. What we notice that leads to is that they become a lot more customer centric. We notice that when teams work better together as intact teams, and they work better together across different functions in a matrixed environment, that somehow leads to them being a lot more in tune with the customer. They listen to the customer and they adapt, and we're seeing wonderful examples of that right now. We're seeing, I think, companies that produce beer now producing hand sanitizer. We are seeing tourism and hotel organizations now housing people who are experiencing domestic violence. We're looking at all kinds of ways that businesses are adapting to the crazy times that we're in, and that shows that they are at that level, that high level of listening to their customer and their environment and adapting to the times that we're in. So you see high levels of innovation, of testing and learning, and then you also see that they are harnessing the technology, by the way, that's existed for a very, very long time, is finally being used to its full capabilities, not just from connection and collaboration like we are today through Zoom, but also for increasing experiences, for example, like onboarding. Onboarding now has to happen 100% virtually. And now we really have to think about that experience. How is a new person coming into our organization where they cannot come into an office? How are they going to onboard? We are absolutely going to have to create an experience. It's going to have to harness technology, and we're going to have to build a very thoughtful process. And so I'm really finding that culture is now coming to life through what is happening out there. So that is just a really simple snapshot of the process, the methodology that we use to talk about how to unearth your own culture in your own organization, how to make good decisions, how to bring together teams, how to get closer to your customers, and how to innovate in an agile environment. So I hope that was useful. Very soon I'm going to move on to teams and what we can do at a team level, unless there's any conversation or questions we should have at the organizational level. Pop them in chat and I'll definitely get to them now in a few seconds. One company that I've noticed has really changed their culture, and I mean, this is just heroic how this has happened over a short period of time under the leadership of Satya Nadella, is Microsoft. 144,000 people in this organization. And over a short period of time, they've moved from what they used to call a know-it-all organization to a learn-it-all organization. And what we noticed is this has had a material impact on their business. They were already doing very, very well. But you can see in the space of a year how they have lifted their game above Apple and Amazon and way above Google. Now that was end of 2019. I think they've dropped below Apple since then, but they are worth close to, I think, 1.2 trillion. But that's definitely the change in culture had a definite change on the how. That also had a change on the business and the business model, and that has had a very a big impact in their business outcomes. Just checking in to see if there's any other questions or thoughts before I move on. Nope. So we're going to move on to teams. I know that for most people at an organizational level, you might not have the control to implement some of these things. So I thought what we could do is look at what do teams that are successful, continuously successful, what do they do differently from the rest? Now, there was a piece of research that was commissioned in Google called Project Aristotle, and that was in 2016, and that looked at what is it that makes a perfect team. They interviewed thousands of people, hundreds of teams, and what they found was there were 5 keys to high-performing teams. What underpins those 5 keys is high levels of psychological safety. So what does that mean, psychological safety? Psychological safety means high levels of trust. And trust is in itself is an odd thing to put your finger on. But if you can answer the questions, do I feel comfortable to speak my mind, even though what I'm thinking is counter to what everybody else is saying? Do I feel comfortable to take risks? Do I feel comfortable to make mistakes and admit that I've made mistakes? And do I feel comfortable to kind of bring my whole self to work? Then you have high levels of psychological safety. If you're saying no to some of those questions, then, you know, chances are other people in your team feel the same way. So high levels of psych safety. Now, wrapping up, dependability, the question you would ask there is, can I depend on my team to deliver quality work on time? Structure and clarity, do I get the vision of my organization, where it's going and how I play into that? Meaning, do I find personal meaning in my work? And impact is, do I believe my work contributes to positive outcomes out there in the community and the organization? So that is how you would test for those 5 keys and whether they exist in your team. If you feel that your team can do better in any of these areas, there's some awesome examples of teams that are doing really well. If you just search for the word Buurtzorg, you'll see an interesting example of an organization that is full of self-managed teams, and you'll get some great tips there. You'll also see great tips on Google's website Rework, work. There's some awesome research there on what great leaders do differently from the rest. So not just great teams, but what great leaders do differently. The Dare to Lead Hub from Brené Brown has some brilliant tools on running rumbles. So that's how you can have those brave conversations that you've often wished you could have. And then Atlassian has a brilliant set of tools called Playbooks on their website. So have a look at those. We are hashtag in this together. So if you think that you could do with some extra help and support, the Culture Equation is here for you. We do have a monthly newsletter. We run webinars similar to this. And we are on the lookout for a team that could do with some team coaching roundabout now that we're offering free of charge. That's for a charity organization, 7 people or less. Reach out on any of those connections or contacts there on this page. And we look forward to being a part of your boost going forward.
Thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot right there. So thank you for your time. And do we have a couple of questions before we finish today? Any questions? This isn't your only window. It's just one of many windows. Ellie taught me that last week. I said it was the only window. She said, no, it's not the only window. There's a lot of windows. Any questions at all? And don't forget, all of these presentations are online on our website under the Corporate Kindness Collection. I've dropped the link in there for you. This isn't the last we're going to see of this young lady here. So yeah, if you do have any culture challenges or just want to have a chat, do reach out and do say hello, and enjoy the rest of your day. Remember to be kind to each other. Stay in tune with your team right now, because they need you just like you need them more than ever. Lots of love. Okay. Take care. And
thanks all. Bye.